first episode of the Music Reviewer. My name's Josh, and this is just going to be a podcast I'm starting out. If it works out, great. It's just going to be mainly comprised of albums that I'd like to talk about that I think are pretty cool, some that I think that aren't. But hopefully, this is just something that I can continue to do. About me, I'm just a 26-year-old guy who likes talking about music, enjoy going to live music. Um, I'm a musician myself. I won't go too into that, but I've been playing since I was a young a young lad. But now now I'll get to the gist of the episode today. It's just going to be an album review on the New Abnormal, the New Strokes album. The title is the New Abnormal. The Strokes are an indie rock band, or just alternative rock, however you like to classify them. Start off in 1998, just a bunch of young guys. Um, Probably learned how to play their instruments as they were writing their first album, but needless to say, they've been integral to the genre, of indie rock since the 2000s. They've gone on to see commercial success, to the point of being headliners all over the world. Europe, Asia, States, South America. Um, they really are a band that you could definitely attribute their success to timing, but also they do make great music. Um, so I am a little biased in this review, but I'll try to be objective as possible. So going into this album, I know the Strokes. This is their first album that they've done since being off of their label since the beginning of the band, RCA. And their last album was a little controversial because of that. The story is that they didn't want to release the album because they were tired of being on this record label. So when you go back and look at that album cover, there's no art. It's just the record label's, I guess, stock art. I'm not really sure how that came about, but I find it funny. That album did have some good tracks on it, though. It wasn't, a bad album. I know some people didn't probably enjoy it as much as, their early work, which most people uh, are most fond of, specifically the first album. Now, the this album um, is an album that I felt was quite good in some areas. Some areas I thought maybe they could have used some trimming. It is worth noting it's produced by Rick Rubin, although I feel like the presence of him is maybe a little bit minimal. Of course, Rick Rubin's a famous producer that helped pioneer the sound of many bands starting as early as the 90s, Red Hot Chili Peppers, even several hip hop artists as well. Um, which I find it quite fascinating actually that they went with Rick Rubin. Julian Casablancas is kind of that guy that he's sort of an experimental artist in his own vein. He's the frontman of a band called The Voids, which their music is it is a little bit different from the Strokes, but you can definitely hear uh, the influence Casablancas brings to that band as well. Um, Starting off, this album has a track called "The Adults Are Talking." This track here, I didn't find that great. It is a bit of a song that it reminded me of the first Two Door Cinema Club album for some reason on those guitar parts. Um, that was what I took away from it. Um, Casablancas, his falsetto vocals uh, does make an appearance throughout the album, but on this first song, it definitely does as well. Um, the next song, I believe, what's it titled? Selfless. Um, let's see. The next song, Selfless, is a powerful vocal performance by Casablancas. There does a quite It does this cool thing where the guitar and the vocals have these quarter tone melodic parts that I thought were pretty good. I wish they did that a little bit more on the album. But I feel like the album definitely does pick up in the next song, Brooklyn Bridge to Chorus. It's one of my favorites on the album. It sounds like an 80s tune, quite on the nose too. The lyrics reference 80s bands at some point, so there's like a Peter Hook bass line on it. I thought that was pretty nice. Um, yeah, it's a cool stroke song. Um, and speaking of the 80s, they continue kind of like in this vein where they have a song called "Dancing with Myself." Really, it's like it's not called "Dancing with Myself." It's called "Bad Decisions." It's a Blatin ripoff of the Billy Idol "Dancing with Myself." He is credited in the song, but every time I listen to it, that's all I can think about is that song. Um, it's probably their most commercially successful song on this album so far. A lot of the indie and alternative rock radios have it nonstop on their rotation. So this might be the most well-known song coming out of this album, which is, might be it's a bit of a shame, but um, I've noticed that bands have been doing this, at least bands that um, I am fond of, such as like the Arctic Monkeys. They did that on their AM album for some reason. With War Pigs, Arabella, they stole the hook on there too. I don't know if this is really a trend or if they're trying to make it a trend. Um, it's a decent song, but I felt like the next song, Eternal Summer, was much better. I know this song is a bit of a slow burner. Some people don't like it, but I thought it was a cool fusion of what can I, what is this like a Clash and let's see, Clash and maybe David Bowie type deal. There's some cool parts on it. Julian Blancas does this cool shouty vocal line with some scratch guitar. It's a little funky. There's like some whiny tone in the back. I thought it was a pretty cool tune. Probably one of my favorites on the album. Let's see, where do we go here? The next of the album it is quite good. At the Doors, the first single I believe that was released. It's probably the most non-stroke song I've listened to date, or non-stroke sounding song. That doesn't make sense to say non-stroke song. Non-stroke sounding song. The song is quite different. It doesn't have chugging eighth note guitars. No, guitar line. It's just the synth line that repeats throughout the whole entire song. Uh, Julian Casablancas kind of just steals the show with that vocal performance as well. Which, if there's one thing to take away from the albums, I feel like his vocal performance is quite good. There are some parts where he does maybe try to go out of his register, but this song, um, there's some nice touches to it. Um, there's these swelling synths, but yeah, that's probably one of the songs that might sneak up on you that might end up being your favorites if you take this listen on this album. Let's see, Why Are Sundays So Depressing? I felt like that was an interesting song. This song has it reminds me of some early Strokes material. Some This guitar sounds straight off of Reptilia at some points. Talking style vocals. Um, there's a cool transition that happens from the chorus to the second verse, but the song does lose momentum, which I feel like is probably the Achilles heel of this album. It does lose steam in certain parts, and I feel like they maybe could have used some trimming. Um, Even though it is not that long of an album, maybe they could have just trimmed it down a little bit more. Not the same anymore. This one, it has a mysterious sound to it. It's again a little too long. There's like these lounge style vocals that Casablancas delivers. And the album does close off on a pretty strong track called "Ode to the Mets." I like the song a lot. Um, there's this part where Casablancas calls for the drums in the middle of the track, and the drums come in, kind of makes it seem like you're watching some singer perform, on a Tuesday night, and there's four people in the audience. But the vocals and the synths fall together in this pretty melody that's established in the song. And the album kind of just ends like that. It's pretty straightforward, mostly in your face. Most of the songs, the Strokes album. I don't really feel like there's much diving into it. Some of the lyrics are a little cryptic, but I feel like overall it's probably a sad album. Um, but yeah, I give it like a 7 out of 10. Hopefully they don't wait as long as they did for a new album, but if they do, there's probably going to be a lot of material between now and then. They all have side projects. Albert Hammond Jr. has this thing going on. And that'll be it. If you like this episode, make sure to keep on maybe subscribing to this podcast. Not sure when the next one will be out, but thanks for listening. See y'all later.